You can buy any size you need.
Yeah, I've been looking at them, they seem expensive. If I went electric, I'd have to install more robust electrical wiring to handle it. But I am still considering it. It might, over a period of time, I'm certain
you should definitely go for
itself.
My advice to you will be, I also spent the last 4 years of my professional life working on solar energy. And I can tell you, if you can combine conventional water heating with solar energy, you'll get 70 to 80% of your heat for free from the sun, even in Missouri. So, I mean, there is more than one way, creative way to provide for your needs without having to spend lots of money investing in energy consumption.
It is worth the research. I've studied it for a very long time.
I agree with you. Yes, please.
You just mentioned solar, and so I'd like you to speak about that for a few minutes, if you will. You did mention it during your talk. Just in terms of the initial expense to install it at all, and for what purposes, and what can an average salaried person and lower to middle class, let's say, manage to integrate over time, and at what cost?
If you were living in the southwestern corner of the United States, I'll give you lots of tips on how you can get free energy. But since we're living in Missouri here, I'm going to have to give you an answer based on our area here. It's extremely difficult for an individual to invest in solar power within the state of Missouri and recover their investment in less than 20 to 30 years. So it's because of the cycle, the number of days the sun is out and the number of days you're going to get almost full day of sun are much less than it is in the southwestern corner of the United States. But that doesn't mean we have to give up on solar power. Like I said, I spent between 2008 and 2010, by the end of 2010 in Arizona. And I designed and built solar power plants there. And let me tell you, the good news is there's plenty of land in the southwestern corner of the United States, between the states of New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Nevada, and even the southwestern corner of the state of Colorado. But there is enough land here, even only in the southern portion of California, to build enough of what I designed for living to provide energy for the whole United States. So, I mean, all I need is 100 square mile radius of an area that I can build on its solar power plants there that will provide the whole United States with power, shutting down all coal-fired and nuclear power plants. But it's going to take two ingredients. Number one ingredient is commitment by the people and the government, and that is not there. Number two, it's going to take money. The company I worked for, and for those who are interested, I have in my cell phone, I have a 40-second clip of a power plant I built in Peoria, Arizona. And this plant, it has dishes. Each dish is 38 feet in diameter, lined up with mirrors, and about 22 feet away from the mirrors on a boom, there is a 4-cylinder engine. It's a Stirling cycle. For those who know or familiar with the Stirling cycle engine, it's just like a small engine as big as maybe you'll find on a large lawnmower. But that engine, each engine on each dish would generate 25,000 watts of power, supporting 60 homes in the United States. And I built a demonstration plant, was 1.5 megawatt, 60 units. And it was very successful. However, and the bad news is the company went out of business because they could not find finances to build larger. We designed 750 megawatt, and to give you an equivalency to the 750 megawatt, for those who are familiar with Callaway Power Plant, which is nuclear power plant in the state of Missouri here, it generates about 1,120 megawatt. So it's larger in size, and yet the difference between the two in its impact on the environment. We're talking about the disaster in Japan, nuclear disaster in Russia, and other places. Many people, including Germany and many European countries and Japan, have made the decision to stay away from nuclear. We know we have proven technology. And I'll be telling you, I'm going to take 1 or 2 minutes of your time and tell you about the projects I'm working on today, which is much more exciting technology. And the thing is, so far we're working now on these projects. We budgeted $17 billion to build those power plants, one in Phoenix, Arizona, one in Barstow, California. We have completed 2 in Spain, one in Algeria, one in Morocco, one in Abu Dhabi. We're building one in India. So we're building those power plants all over the place, and we are moving forward with more of those plants all over the world.
They're solar powered?
These are solar, and I'm going to tell you, the exciting news about it is this technology, we are the only country on earth, or we're the only company on earth that stores the sun energy and releases it at night when the demand is high. For example, in Arizona, demand for power during the summer is actually high, sunrise to sunset. However, the most demand is when people go home. Between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. or so, people cook, they use the microwave, the air conditioners on, all kinds of uses of energy is there. So the local utility asked my company that they want us to generate power only between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Well, the sun is out at 7 in the morning. How do you take the sun energy at 7 and make electricity at 5 or at 9 o'clock at night? So here's how we do it. We have what we call a trough. It's concentrated solar power, CSP. It's a trough lined up with mirrors, and there's 2-inch pipe at the center. All the mirrors are focused on the pipe. We heat synthetic oil from ambient conditions, which is about 100 degrees outside, to 750 degrees. And we take this hot oil and we run it through heat exchanger inside 1.5 million gallon molten salt, not dissolved salt, molten, it's melted salt. We take the temperature of the salt from 450 degrees to 750 degrees. And that's where we store the energy in salt. And at night at 5 o'clock, we have different loop of piping that takes water, high quality polished water. We run it through a boiler and we bring in the same oil circulating now, extracting heat from the salt. And we run it through heat exchanger, creating steam and steam drive, turbine generators, and that's how we make electricity. So we're the only company on earth that stores energy. There are other ways that means to store energy, but we're taking solar energy and we're storing it and we're using it in the evening when we have to. So there are plenty of technologies out there. It takes commitment and it takes money. So hopefully our politicians are smart enough to figure out what's good for us 1 or 2 or 300 years down the road. Yes, please.
I have a question. I read an article, it was about a year ago, and I can't remember if it was in Scientific America or if it was Nature. But they were talking about that if the government would invest in solar panels on every rooftop in America, given that some would produce more than others, that would cut our energy consumption completely. We could cut our energy consumption in half. And they thought that was a better way to go than solar power plants because of the damage to the ecosystems. Even though they're deserts, they are ecosystems with living things in them. And that the solar power plants really take up a lot of space. Can you speak to that?
Sure. First of all, that theory is incorrect. And the reason why it's incorrect, PV, photovoltaic, it's an electric panel, and its energy output, it's only 20% efficient. For each dollar of energy we put in it, the best we can do is 20, maybe 25%, which is really worst in comparison with other energy producing equipment. It's really the worst, number one. Number two, those panels don't last for more than 4 or 5 years. while their cost, your capital investment upfront is so high, it will never pay for itself. So, you know, I mean, we have to give and take. Here's my point though. We don't have to compromise on ecosystems. We don't have to compromise on energy or water consumption, on natural resource consumption. There are technologies out there. The technology I was talking about, the 38-foot in diameter dish, it uses hydrogen gas. That's the most abundant gas on Earth and in the universe. 70% of what we have around us contains hydrogen. So my point is, you have a dish, the technology I worked on in Arizona. You take hydrogen gas and you compress it and you run it through a Stirling engine cycle. You use the gas as it expands to drive 4 cylinders, just like you have a combustion system in your car. However, hydrogen does not combust. The sun heats it, it expands, it drives pistons, and it goes through the cycle, again, cooling cycle, and it starts all over again. So you're not burning anything, you're not consuming natural resources. True enough, yes, there are desert tortoises, which, you know, for many people have never seen or have never heard of, but you count over 6,000 acres, we counted 50. Now, do you want to shut down power consumption in the United States for 50 tortoises? I would say I would rather take those 50, move them. We were calculating the cost of $2 million per turtle to move them from one location to another. So my point is, you can actually still save this population and move them to a safer place, and yet use, you know, I mean, you're not going to use the whole desert area. There are mountains, there are areas, but you can move them to another area that they still can be protected and survive, and yet provide for the rest of us too. Yes, please.
I have a question. You mentioned that you had this technology now, essentially, to power the United States with solar energy, and it shocks me. I've never heard this before. And you said the two things that were limiting you were sort of political will and funding. And I'm curious as to why you think the political will isn't there, because like just hearing this now, why wouldn't anybody?
Yeah, why do we know about this?
Sure.
Yeah.
And the reason is there are special interest groups. Why aren't we driving today electric cars? Because 30 or 40 years ago, certain energy producers, such as natural gas and your gasoline at the pump, those guys, they felt the whole industry will be devastated by having an electric car. So they lobbied our wise politicians in Washington, D.C. to pass laws to protect them and their industries. So there is lots of protectionism throughout the United States. And that's really what's killing new good ideas, technology-wise.
So that's the politics.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
great. What actions could people take in order to like make these new technologies more, like people more aware that there is the potential there? It's not just we have to put photovoltaics on our roof that may or may not, I mean.
Politically participate. Go to your elected official. Ask them what they know about renewable energy. Ask them what they have done to serve their own constituents and their own community and their country, and save it for the next generation to come. They're not going to have an answer for you.
Well, as an example, Claire McCaskill is sponsoring a bill to stop the, was it $25 billion subsidies to the oil companies, for instance.
Sure.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does
So-
the solar company have a lobbying group?
Everybody does. But it depends on how big the company is. You know, lobbyists, they might afford lobbyists that they pay them $50,000 a year. Oil companies, they pay their lobbyists $2 million a year.
And they have many more of them.
Exactly. So they all have lobbyists, except some are poor lobbyists and some are rich lobbyists. Some will take you to Hawaii, and some might take you to the Lake of the Ozarks. Any other question?
Isn't there a tax incentive when you do like energy saving appliance?
Yeah, there are some state and federal programs that provide you with some type of incentive, financial incentive to invest in renewable energy. But unfortunately, they're not really advertised. You really have to go out and hunt for it. You go into the internet to find out where they are, how much they are. And then you have to be careful because there is always vendors out there who thrive on programs like this to become rich. So they come just like the insulation we were talking about earlier. They recommend insulation and all this stuff, but they do it for their own benefit, not to benefit you. So you have to be careful what you do and how you do it.
Is there any better way to, what do you call, collect electricity? I know you cannot be safe, it has to be generated at that time and use it like across the United States. Am I correct?
You're talking about the
electricity itself. And any new way to...
You can store energy, you can store electricity.
In a different form, not electricity itself.
There are, as an engineer, I can talk to you about 20 different ways you can store energy.
Not electricity itself.
Yes, you can store electricity.
Oh.
And I'll give you a good example now.
Like battery.
It's south of St. Louis. There's a mountain called Tomsock. For some of you who've heard of Tomsock power plant. Union Electric in 1965, they bought a mountain. They cut the top of the mountain off and they put 4,000 acre lake. And it's at the bottom of the, I think it's the Black River. Anyway, what they used to do for many people who really don't understand, how they process electricity, for most power plants throughout the United States, they operate just like your car engine. There's minimum and maximum that the engine can run on, and if you run it below, that's the idling speed, it shuts off. Same way with power plants. Coal-fired power plants, Labadie power plant is 2,400 megawatt, 4 units. Each unit produces 600 megawatts. During the day, it produces electricity at peak, which is 600 megawatt. But the operator has the option at night to drop it down to 392 megawatt, and yet still produce electricity without shutting it down. Now, why do they produce electricity when everybody's sleeping and nobody's burning electricity? They have to, because if they shut it down, to start this unit all over again to produce electricity, it takes 16 hours. So if they shut it down, you go to sleep at 10 o'clock, nobody's burning electricity. They shut it down, 10 o'clock. Count 16 hours later, by then, people will be needing electricity, but there's no electricity out there. So what they used to do, they used to produce this electricity at 392 at the bare minimum, then they ship it to the back where they have resistor banks there just to burn the electricity they just made. They burn it, they make it and burn it. Nobody pays for it, zero. So they made it and they burned it. The Union Electric said, how about if we store this energy? So they bought this mountain, they put big nice lake, and then at night, instead of burning this electricity, they shipped the power from Labadie power plant down to Tomsock, and they pumped water from the river all the way to the upper reservoir. Its electricity was going to be wasted anyway, so they pumped water up. Now, during the day, when power is needed, the pumps are reversible. So the pumps during the day became electric generators. So now water is on top, drove just like a hydropower plant, and they generated water. At that time, when Tomsock was built, its efficiency was 65%. For each dollar of electricity they put in, during the day they were able to recover 65. When I left Union Electric in 1998, they improved on the design and they improved on the efficiency from 65 to 85%. So now there are ways to store energy. I can talk to you about compressed, you find caves underground and you actually seal certain areas and then compress air using compressors. You compress air and you push it inside big caves caverns underground. And during the day, when you need to, you reverse the cycle. Now the compressor becomes a generator and you run air back through and you generate electricity. There are so many ways you can do it, but it takes money.
So you store in different forms?
Yes, you can store. There's thermal storage, there is chemical storage, with batteries. You have fuel cell where you can take electricity and you can actually create hydrogen and so forth and so on, and you can use it as part of a fuel cell operation, where during the day you can use the fuel cell to make electricity. Yes.
Can you speak about the energy that we lose in transportation? I was told one time that we lose almost 50% of the energy that we generate just transporting it through wires
No.
with the resistance.
Losses throughout the system, no more than 5%. We are connected all the way through Canada. We can ship power all the way from Canada to Florida. We can ship it from Florida to Canada. We can crisscross the country. Worst case scenario, the maximum loss we have is 5%. And we manage to have minimum losses because we transmit power at much higher voltage. We ship power from Florida to Canada at 530,000 volts. So the higher the voltage, the thicker the wire, and of course the lesser the losses. And mainly losses are mainly friction losses in the line, you know. So 50% is too much.
Where does fiber optics come into this?
Fiber optics are used mainly for other data communication and voice communication. You can't use fiber optics to transmit electricity because of its size and what it takes to transmit energy.
Can I ask you about you mentioned 2 power plants that are currently operating in Phoenix and somewhere called Barstow, I think? The plants that you built, the solar plants.
Okay, there's 2 plants. One I built in Peoria, Arizona.
yeah.
And Peoria is only about half an hour outside Phoenix.
Okay.
You know, just like St. Louis.
But
And you're
those
going
2 are functioning and they are providing electricity and power for a part of the United States right now?
Well, the unit I built in Peoria is mainly what we call a demonstration plant. It's 1.5 megawatt. It was mainly built to demonstrate that the technology is valid and viable and can be mass produced at a larger scale. So even though we built 1.5 megawatt unit, we designed 750 megawatt. One for Barstow and one for a town called in El Centro, California.
Are those 2 operating, those Barstow and El Centro?
In Barstow, like I said, they couldn't secure, they needed about $1.5 billion. So they couldn't, they had all the ingredients, that what they didn't have is the cash. So that wasn't built. However, the good news is we are building a power plant now, 280 megawatt, in a town called Gila Bend. And it's south of Phoenix, Arizona. It's about 45 minutes south of Phoenix. And this plant will be also using part of our technology to store energy in salt. Yes.
And these plants just utilize the current infrastructure to get the power?
Typically what investors, what people like us do, we look for locations close to an existing transmission line. So it has to be within maybe 1 to 2 or 3 miles, no more than 3 miles because of the cost of transmission. So you build it close to an existing transmission line and you make it, and of course you start shipping it throughout the United States. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
We have some refreshments in the back for everyone to, if you want to hang around and chat a little bid more. Maybe you'd like to answer some more questions that people might have that come up. Again, please join us here on May the 20th for our celebration of the birth, death, and parinirvana of the Buddha. Thank you.
We still have 30 minutes of discussion. Right?
Well, we have the refreshments, so we can just
Okay.
do, oh, yeah, any question, I'm sorry, for anyone had a question for Rosan?
We'll end at 4:30.
Okay. Okay, please help yourself to refreshments. Thank you.
Good presentation.